Hello, Internet, and thank you for watching. Recently, I was watching Remonster while I was on the treadmill, and I was thinking to myself, wow, this is really awful. From animation to storytelling, the show is just absolutely atrocious. And even at the worst part, and at the height of its slideshow action scenes and its unsexy fan service scenes, I was thinking to myself, at least it's not the Acolyte bad. Yeah, sorry about not getting a video out in the last however long it's been. I've had a rough time of it with work and everything. Anyway, on to this garbage program. I had planned to cover the Acolytes some weeks ago. However, I just couldn't find time to actually sit down and record anything, but I took pretty extensive notes on the first episode. So this video that I'm doing now is going to be very episode 1 heavy. And recently, I just watched episode 4 and 5, so I'm going to talk a bit about them too. I have seen all of the episodes because, well, I told myself after I watched TLJ that I was basically going to be done with Star Wars unless they did something completely different. And then they made The Mandalorian. So I jumped on the bandwagon there and watched The Mandalorian. And that was different enough from everything else that had come before it that I thought, hey, maybe they can do something with this. But then at the end of the second season of The Mandalorian, it became clear that they were not going to do anything different. So I jumped back off the bandwagon and swore to myself that I wasn't going to do anything unless it didn't have anything to do with any of the movies, and it didn't fall into any of the movie timelines. And what I mean by that is it didn't fall into any time frame that they could work it into a movie. So it had to be like Old Republic stuff, or at least take place so far in the past that it wouldn't affect anything in episode 1, or it took place so far in the future that it didn't have anything to do with episode, what is that, 9? But anyway, I heard they were doing the Acolyte, and I kind of got excited almost because they said that they were going to set it in that time frame. They were going to set it several hundred years before anything to do with Anakin Skywalker and, Darth Vader and the Empire, all that jazz. So none of that was going to take place. So I was kind of excited for it. But then they said that Leslie Headland was going to do it. And I looked into who she was, and I became very disillusioned very quickly. I don't consider myself to hate Leslie Headland. It's more that she's never been a part of anything I've been interested in or that I've wanted to see. So her just jumping onto a big sci-fi project like Star Wars is going to be a big problem for me, because it shows that Hollywood isn't listening. They're not getting the message that these people that don't want to work in these genre films shouldn't be giving these big genre projects. So when I see that, she's coming up, she's going to be making this new show that I was almost excited for, I got a bit depressed. I knew it was just going to be basically nothing to do with what I wanted them. What I really want to convey here is just that there was nothing to interest me beyond the timeline variable, and Leslie Headland's involvement in the project made me actively nervous about it. And then all I could hear for months, weeks, whatever it was that there were tons of troubles behind the scenes. There were tons of things that didn't make it to editing or got into a test audience or something. I don't remember the specifics, and I cannot be bothered to look it up. So we're just going to press forward. By the way, if this is ramblier than my normal content, that's because I've gone completely off script here and I'm just mumbling into a microphone. So enough me stalling. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of jump right into it with episode 1 and my extensive notes on that. So the show starts off with basically a big fight. And right off the bat, within the first, I don't know, 5 minutes, I knew I was going to hate this show. I knew it from those first few frames, just because apart from the really crappy dialogue where she says something to the effect of attack me with all your might or something. I don't remember the exact phrasing, and I don't want to go back to watch it, but she says it a few times. But aside from that, even, I knew I was going to hate this because anytime you open up on one of these humongous fight scenes, you have to do one of two things. You either have to make me instantly care, you have to make me instantly identify with some of these characters and make me invested in why they're fighting, or you have to make it so incredibly cool that I overlook that and I can just enjoy it on spectacle. For an example of the latter, I want to get into The Matrix. The first Matrix movie opens, and within, I think, the first, 5-6 minutes, you get a really cool fight scene with Trinity and some of the agents, and that falls into that cool spectacle. Like, at that point, we don't know who Trinity is. We don't know who any of these agents are. We don't know why they're fighting, but it looks cool enough that it makes us interested in everything that's going on. And it's funny because Carrie-Anne Moss, Trinity, is going to show up in The Acolyte basically with another cold open fight scene like this, and it's going to be very depressing. And the fight starts with that horrible line, the one that I mentioned just a second ago. But anyway, when it moves beyond that, you're hoping for at least like some decent action. But here's the real problem, is that Trinity is way better than what's-her-face. I will not learn her name. I refuse to. So I'm just going to call her occupational safety, for no reason. Anyway, occupational safety and Trinity square off against each other, and Trinity is absolutely, it's so much faster, so much more competent than occupational safety here. And it's very apparent. I'm not some kind of choreography expert. I don't understand fighting all that well. I just can call it out when I see it as absolutely terrible, like in this show, and in particular in Echo. And I think that this is more of a Disney Plus maybe problem. I don't know if it's Disney as a whole. I mean, some of the Marvel stuff earlier on had really good fight choreography in it. The Winter Soldier really comes to mind because everyone's doing hand-to-hand combat there, and there's not a whole lot of CGI. But yeah, ever since the end of Endgame really is kind of the demarcation point here. Also, what comes to mind is The Last Jedi for bad choreography. But Endgame, or everything post Endgame, has been pretty bad coming from Disney. But yeah, anyway, moving on beyond this, after Trinity gets stabbed up, which doesn't make any sense, but we're just absorbing this show. We're just enduring it. Once we get out of there, it's revealed, they reveal the chick's face, which, I mean, occupational safety should have been like hidden behind that thing, the little veil. We should have had a bit more buildup, but the show can't calm down for 5 seconds and breathe, which it's simultaneously too fast and too slow, because it's it's saying a lot of things, but it's not, conveying a lot of information. I've heard it said that a politician is somebody that can talk for hours and never say anything. This is that show. This is the show for that. This show is just one giant politician in that regard. One thing that stood out as really particular to me, aside from like the choreography and one actor being way better at fighting than the other actor, was just the effects in this show. They try to pull off some of these like force move type things. And first of all, I don't think they understand the force and what it's supposed to be able to do. But they also don't understand special effects, which, I mean, it's a Disney Plus show. They're going to spend $200 million and have a shitty looking show. So that's just par for the course. But yeah, I thought it was particular to mention because I want to almost applaud the show for having more alien creatures and not just, people, because I feel like of most of the Disney era Star Wars stuff, they don't like putting aliens in it outside of maybe like The Force Awakens. But like you look at something like Rogue One or Andor, or I can't even really think of too many alien creatures from like The Last Jedi. They made pretty much everyone a human. That way they didn't have to dress them up. But yeah, by the way, The Last Jedi is the last Star Wars movie I saw in theaters. I haven't seen Solo at all. I haven't seen most of Rise of Skywalker. I've watched a little bit of it, but I haven't seen the whole thing start to finish, and I probably won't anytime soon. And like I said, I watched the first 2 seasons of The Mandalorian, but there's a lot of human characters there. They're very few and far between, but that I understood almost more because it was very apparent that show was on a much tighter budget than this one is. But everything still looks like garbage. The Mandalorian achieved a lot more with a lot less. And I think that comes from passionate filmmakers and passionate actors and, effects artists and things that actually wanted to create The Mandalorian, at least in the first season. And they don't want to be making The Acolyte. No one wants to be making this. None of the actors want to be there except for the guy who plays Soul, who I will now refer to as Squid Game because I don't want to butcher his real name. Anyway, moving on. When we're done murdering Trinity, we go on to a spaceship, and right off the bat, I know everyone's been talking about it since, but I wrote these notes before I watched any review or anything. Mechanic is a really stupid name for a mechanic. Why can't you just use mechanic? I mean, when Luke was a pilot in the original series, they didn't call him something stupid like a flyer wrist or something. I can't even think of something that stupid. But anyway, moving past that somewhat, I was surprised to see the Shatnerians from the Plinkett reviews. That was kind of nice. The voice acting for them is not synced as ever, which I found slightly hilarious. I chuckled a bit. But anyway, on this ship, we do see occupational safety again, except it's actually a completely different character who we will call Health Administration for, just to differentiate the characters a little bit, because the show doesn't do anything to differentiate these two characters. I mean, the actor really doesn't play the two characters terribly differently. They're both wide-eyed, young, conventionally attractive women. So like there's nothing that differentiates the two. Can I get like a hairstyle that's different, an accent? I was thinking right before I started this video about this section, and I was trying to find a point of comparison. And the biggest point of comparison I could make is the Parent Trap movie with Lindsay Lohan. I mean, that is basically the same effect that they're doing here. They just did it way better in the Parent Trap because you can definitely tell when Lindsay Lohan is supposed to be which character. They have different hair. They have, a whole scene where they're like, oh, hey, we have to pierce your ears because your ears aren't pierced and mine are. So they have to pierce her ears. They have to, she throws on an accent for one of the characters. Any of these things would have been great to differentiate the character, other than like the clothes, I guess, are different, but it gets really hard in episode 4 to tell them apart because their costumes are so similar. I'm getting off track here, but anyway, the actor that plays occupational safety and health administration, she is absolutely terrible. And I noticed it from that first line that I keep coming back to, that's absolutely terrible, but also the all of her performance leading up to this point, and spoiler alert for the next 4 episodes, it does not get any better. It gets way worse, and she doesn't even try, it seems like. I've not seen her in anything else. I don't know if it's a directing thing. I don't know if it's a script thing or if it's an acting thing, but she's not doing a good job with this show, with these characters. And also in this scene, with, the health administration chick and all of this going on, everyone's been mentioning the fire. I feel like I'll tokenly mention that, but I gotta admit, I really didn't catch it the first time. I thought about it like after the episode ended and made a note at the very end of my script, but it's not that big of a viewing experience problem, which I'm trying to more focus on that because I feel like I can bring my unique perspective to this material there. But one thing I do not hear enough of is that the droid that health administration has, she is the droid a she? Can you call a droid a gender? Anyway, I'm getting off track. Holy crap. But that droid is, it's something special awful. It's not good. It's not funny. It's not endearing. What it really feels like is that they are trying to replicate what happened in The Mandalorian with baby Yoda, and they're trying to be able to market this thing, and it's not going to work. The thing's too generic, and it doesn't have a decent enough screen presence, but it really speaks to kind of the cynical nature of the show that they have this thing in, and you see it a lot, and it's making noise all the time. And they really try to, I feel like they're trying to play up like a whimsical angle, but really this is just a device. This is like having a personal relationship with your phone, which, unless you're going to do the her thing, you're not going to do a good job with that. And speaking of the noises this thing makes, the whole show, at least in the very first episode, is just so noisy. Everything's happening, and the pacing is kind of all over the place. And like I said, it's very much making a lot of noise without saying anything. Something's always coming up every 2 or 3 minutes just to try to keep you engaged, but eventually it just dies off, I'll get into this later whenever I'm talking about episode 4 and 5, but trust me, the show just gets super boring. But this first episode is edited particularly poorly because you're not given any time to absorb where you are. You're not given any time to understand your time frame, which particularly it comes up in this episode that it's more important to understand what time frame this is. And I'll get into that right now, actually, because when they bring in the bartender that watched Trinity get murdered, it's really confusing because I don't know how long it's been since that scene, that first scene, and I don't know like how long it took them. I think they mentioned offhandedly that it was like last night. So you're telling me that within 24 hours, the Jedi have gone across the galaxy, investigated this murder, picked up this bartender, which is a really weird thing to do. Why would, like, think about the cops. The cops don't bring in a witness to an interrogation. They might let you look behind like two-way glass or whatever for like a lineup, but they're not going to let you watch interrogation. Like, why would they bring this guy all the way across? And it was established that he had a kid, which that does not mean anything to me. I hate children. So, you know, like they took him away from his kid to come identify this person in person. And just based on that description, they picked Health Administration out. Why are they here? Why are the Jedi here? What trail of clues led them here? And this is what I'm talking about with the pacing and everything, because they don't get into any of that. They're not interested in it. They just want to show you the next what they think is cool. They want to show you the droid. They want to show you fire in space. They want to show you laser swords. Like, they're not interested in telling you a story. They're interested in like showing you a shiny nickel. And I don't want to get off of the scene where the Jedi just randomly show up to take, Health Administration into custody, because it introduces the one Jedi kid. Again, I'm not going to call him, I'm not going to look up his name. I don't care enough, but he's bad. All right. His acting is stiff. I think he's trying to imply that Health Administration and himself have some kind of prior relationship and there's some kind of friction there, but it just doesn't come together because he's not conveying the right emotions at the right time. And he has nothing to play off of because she's so wooden with her acting. And again, I don't know if it's these actors. I don't know if it's the direction, or I don't know if it's the script, but all of it comes together to make for an almost unbearable scene. But also in that super uncomfortable scene with Jedi Knight, I'm just gonna, you know what? I'm not putting any effort into it. He's Jedi Knight uncomfortable. I called him something else in my notes, but we're gonna try to keep it clean. We're gonna do this family friendly here. But anyway, Jedi Uncomfortable is there with, I think she's a Padawan. I've got it in my notes that she's a Padawan. But yeah, she's actually got really good makeup. And it stands out in particular with everyone else in the show looking like absolute garbage. And I thought that she conveyed a very good screen presence, even though she had like nothing to do and nothing to say. So it came out in my notes that she was in particular, she at least had good makeup and she had good screen presence. And so she's the best character for the series, hands down. Until Jedi Master Squid Game shows up, that is, because Jedi Master Squid Game is actually fantastic. And he brings a level of credibility and elevation to the show that I'm going to get into a little bit down the line here. So to kind of jump to him a little bit, I'm not going to get too deep into him just yet, but when we jump over to Coruscant and he is teaching the younglings, Coruscant looks like garbage. Coruscant looks like shit. I can't believe that they've just let this dump out onto the website. It's honestly kind of baffling. Um, this scene in particular, I feel like demonstrates a level of care that's, I mean, I reserve for like my video editing. It's atrocious what they do to Coruscant. And in this scene in particular, I really wish I was a person that had the time to download video files and cut them up and show them here. But if you go back and you look at this episode, then the setting here, the set and everything in it, just, it's so overexposed and it's so stupid looking. It looks fake. It looks like nothing's in there. And it probably isn't. You know, in The Mandalorian, they had like a whole behind the scenes thing where everything's basically done in front of a blue screen, which I feel like they tried to do here, except they didn't know how to do it. You have to know what you're doing and how you have to plan ahead on how you're going to do some of this stuff. If you're going to do blue screen scenes like this, I mean, it requires a lot more forethought and it requires a lot more care than clearly what they were willing to give to this show. And I mean, this scene introduces my least favorite character. And again, this is kind of like in my notes, I have this whole rant here. And I'm going to get into it a little bit, but I did just want to mention that this actor is terrible. The Green Lady is awful. And apparently she is Leslie Headland's wife. So she got hired because she knows somebody on the production, which is sometimes a bad sign. And this is definitely one of those times, because every line of dialogue just sounds so forced. It sounds like she's trying to, you know, curl up into a ball and die. She's not letting go of her ego. So it's just very clear that she's not comfortable doing what she's doing. And her makeup looks atrocious. She's got, I actually went on a whole rant a few weeks ago at my friend's house about this, because ever since I think it was X-Men Apocalypse came out, and Jennifer Lawrence had all of her things to say about like how uncomfortable it was underneath latex makeup, that, you know, she hated it, and that's why there's not a whole lot of her in the blue makeup as Mystique in that movie. But I guess that they didn't want to put her in latex makeup, and they were I guess they just went to a Halloween store and got the cheapest paint that they could put on her skin, because it looks different in every single scene. And it's clear that they don't know how to light her, and they're not really trying to adjust or do anything with it in editing or with the lighting. So as they are lighting her, her skin tones are changing and they are splotchy. It makes it look like she is a green alien with a skin condition. It doesn't look impressive. It looks absolutely amateurish. Like this is something that a high school AV club might do. And another thing, part of my rant here in my notes is that the door that she comes through, she uses the Force on it, which I've mentioned it briefly for just like half a second, that they don't really seem to understand the Force in this show. And, you know, it's not like unheard of. It's not like the Force couldn't open the door, but they're in the future. You know, we're supposed to be in a galaxy far, far away, and this door should open automatically. We've seen automatic doors in the Star Wars universe. You can go to your local grocery store and probably see an automatic door. It really takes away from, you know, the atmosphere that she opened the door with the Force. Like, it's not given any reverence in that context. You know, it's just, oh, hey, it's just, you know, using my hand. It's just doing something mundane with the Force, which has happened in the Star Wars universe, but it's always contextually more reverent. You know, like it's a big deal when Anakin uses the Force to, you know, cut up a pear and then give it to Padme in episode 2. Like that's kind of almost a joke, if not like him just trying to show off for a girl he likes. You know, it's not like he just wanted to open a door. And it makes the Force seem cheap. It makes the whole universe feel more mundane and boring. Just her doing that. And the door itself pisses me off. The door itself is a problem because it's like 17 feet tall. What is happening that they need a door that's that big? I want to see an alien that's 17 feet tall come through that door. Otherwise, it's over-designed. There's no use for it. You know, going back over this script, I'm thinking to myself, you know, I've seen other set design with giant doors, you know, like in particular, the one that comes to mind is the Helm's Deep scene, I think it is. Or maybe it's just in Rohan or whatever, where Aragorn is coming in out of the rain, maybe, or something, and he's pushing open these huge doors. They're like 20 feet tall or whatever. And the thing about that is that this is a very grand hall that Aragorn's coming in, you know, in Lord of the Rings. And he's coming in, and it's a very cinematic shot. It's very clear that this is deliberately over-designed because the room accommodates that door. However, the set design that they have for this room that they are teaching children in, it's basically like a classroom. Like, go to any school in America or any school around the world, and you are very seldom going to find a 17-foot tall door that just leads into a classroom. And it doesn't lead into like a main hall or something grand. And this is the details that I'm talking about. Like, no one cared that that door was 17 feet tall. It drives in all kinds of questions in my mind. And maybe I'm just a crazy person, but it's like, I'm more and more on the side of the Shatnerians, whatever they're called officially. Anyway, I'm more on their side, because if their space taxes are going to pay for oversized Jedi doors, then yeah, I'm kind of going to be upset. I would be upset if my space taxes were used to build stupid big doors that go nowhere. Why did they have that big door? I demand answers. And I'm not even really done with this scene, but I'm going to okay, one last thing about this scene. The thing about this scene is, aside from, oh, hey, he's teaching younglings, there is nothing fun or interesting about this scene. There's nothing fun or interesting going on. They're just talking to each other about like, oh, hey, Trinity got murdered. Oh, hey, I should go look into this and see about it. Oh, cool. Like, they're conveying information to each other that we, the audience, already know. And that makes for a very tortured experience, viewing wise, because we already know this. We don't need you to reiterate to us the Trinity's dead and that, you know, health administration is going to be the one that's coming in to answer for this. But yeah, that it's just so boring, and it just speaks to the lack of care in the sets, in the script, in the directing. And I'm going to sing Jedi Master Squid Game's praises here in a minute, but for now, everything is just awful and wooden, and the green chick's makeup is just horrible. I cannot stress that enough. So we move into a different scene after that one that's on a prison type ship, and health administration is there, and there's all these other prisoners there, and I mean, it's very obvious that she just went along willingly, which, you know, not going to begrudge the character that's probably within your character. That's completely reasonable. But then she turns to one of the prisoners, and it's got this thing sucking on his face. It's like a face hugger or something. And one of the other prisoners says something to the effect of, oh, it's a parasite and it does weird stuff to you. Like, has this script writer ever taken a creative writing class? Weird stuff. That's an actual quote. That is a quote. I put it in quotes in my notes that they say weird stuff. Like, you're not going to get any more like intricate. It made me think of the scene in Rogue One, which it's not particularly well scripted or well explained, and it's probably elevated somewhat by, you know, Forrest in that scene as Saul. I don't remember his last name anyway, but it's got the brain sucking alien monster thing that like sucks the answers out of the dude's head in that movie. If you know what I'm talking about. If I'm not making any sense, I do apologize, but yeah, there's the alien that sucks the answers out of the dude, and he sits there and explains it in a very cinematic and very professional way that, you know, it's, you know, extracting memories and it's kind of rearranging stuff, and it has the tendency to drive you mad. All right. That's a decent line and a decent way to explain a, you know, more esoteric concept. But it's just very clear that in this show, they didn't care. They didn't care what this alien parasite was supposed to be doing. So they just said, oh, it does weird stuff to you. Does it make him get a boner? Does it make him trans? Does it make him relive childhood memories? What does this thing do? Why even have this here if you're not going to explain it? Like, they clearly wanted to have something that said, oh, hey, this is Star Wars, we're in a sci-fi show, but they didn't want to think through anything, so they just threw in this absolutely garbage line. And it just speaks to, they didn't want to make this show. They didn't want to put in any effort. But anyway, the alien dude, after he says weird stuff's happening, he goes on to say that he's planning an escape, because he explains that there's only droids on this ship guarding them, and really it's only one droid guarding them and two are piloting, which I don't know why you'd have separate robot pilots if they're just piloting ships. Like, that's their only function. Why not just build them into the ship? Why do they need to have humanoid forms that can remove themselves from the ship if they are droids, if they are equipment, and they don't ever do anything else? Why not just make them like a big rectangle that can pilot the ship? Anyway, I'm getting off track here. Back to what the guy's saying. He said, hey, we're gonna, you know, cause the droid to short circuit and escape, which I mean, they're on a ship and there are no windows presumably that I can see in this set. So like, does he know where they are exactly right now? Like, how does he know that? It's very inexplicable. Like, you're in space. It's kind of like if I were, you know, a prisoner and I was getting shipped across, you know, the Mediterranean, and, you know, I was just like, oh, hey, I'm going to escape. But escape where? Like, I'm in the open ocean. I'm not going to swim for 60 miles to get to shore. I need to be able to escape when I get to port, you know, when I can go somewhere else. Like, it doesn't seem that his plan is beyond like, oh, hey, I'm going to get out of this cell and stop the guard droid, which, I mean, there begs a bigger question here of why this scene exists. I'm guessing that this is one of those rewrites that they were talking about, because they did not think to themselves when they wrote this scene what happened with Health Administration in the previous scene, because she was with 1.5 Jedi. There was a Jedi Knight. I think he's a Jedi Knight uncomfortable, and Jedi Padawan horny girl. Health Administration was with 2 professional, like, peacekeepers, and the show does a lot to try to make the Jedi into cops. They just want them to be cops in the show, which isn't what the Jedi really do. I won't get too much more into that, but man, it's kind of like if 2 cops showed up to arrest you, they arrested you, and then they just said, all right, now see yourself to the precinct, to the police station or whatever, and then just left you there. Like, it does not make sense that they would not take this prisoner that they think killed a Jedi Master Trinity. Like, why wouldn't you stick with her? Why wouldn't you see her back safely? Because she poses a very big threat. But no, like, and this is what I'm saying, like, no one thought about this. And so I'm going to just move on from that point. It's kind of weird to think about that they are trying to escape this ship, because they actually did this both in the original trilogy and in the sequel trilogy. In the original trilogy, when Han, Leia, Luke, Chewie, R2-D2, 3PO, all of them, they're trying to get back to the Falcon because they did what they needed to do. They originally came there to go to Alderaan. They got sucked in via tractor beam. They had the tractor beam go down. Boom, they're trying to leave. They're trying to escape to a place. And even in the sequel trilogy, when Han and Chewie and Mary Sue are there with the hentai monsters after, Han comes to get the Falcon back, they're trying to leave that place. They're trying to escape that place to get to the Falcon, to get somewhere else. There's a forward momentum in the plot, and this prison escape that the main character, Health Administration, is not taking, or maybe she is, like, they're really unclear on what all is trying to happen in this scene, and it really just seems like they're padding for time. Eventually what ends up happening is they basically blow up the ship, they disable it more or less, and we see Health Administration jump up, and she tries to save the dude that had his face sucked on. And when she does that, he takes the last escape pod, and she tries to land the ship, and she crashes it, but she's fine. All right, she's okay. And I totally forgot in my notes that I actually notated down, like, what she says to try to basically say to the other prisoners that are, in these jumping in the escape pods. She basically says something to the effect of, like, oh, well, I trust the Jedi. And, that might mean something if we knew more about you. Like, we kind of understand that you're a former Padawan, but, like, I mean, if you're a former Padawan, why didn't you finish and become a Jedi Knight? I mean, obviously you're distrustful of something about the Jedi, but yeah, it's all very poorly explained and very poorly thought out. So I'm just gonna move on. So we go back to Coruscant, and in this scene, I do have to point out again that there is an alien chick there that has really good makeup, and she's got these horns coming out of her head, and it actually looks really cool. I don't know her name, will not go back to get further details and context to this note, but you know what? I do kind of remember that design, and it was cool. But she's standing either right next to, or she's in the scene with the green chick, and she still looks terrible, and it looks like they reapplied her makeup in between, and they still didn't care. They still just slapped that on with a trowel, and it's uneven and terrible looking. And in this scene, they're doing a whole bunch of Force stuff, and I just have to point out that, like, not everything has to be like a kung fu looking move. I mean, if you look at the Avatar cartoon, I'm going to call it a cartoon, but if you look at the original Avatar series, that looks okay. That looks good because it's animated, because it's in a cartoon. It's animated. So, yeah, it looks good there, and animators have a lot more freedom. We can suspend our disbelief a lot more. But as we saw with the live action Avatar show, it looks really stupid in real life. And it looks even stupider with what they're doing here in the Acolyte, because it's not even like they have to do this. They don't have to dance around and make all these big body movements to do Force stuff. They just have to think it, and the Force can do it. And the example I want to use is, I mean, Luke was literally sitting in his cockpit, and he used the Force to shoot the missiles into the Death Star to blow it up. And I mean, that's what kind of made the Force unique amongst all these other magic using stuff. Like, he didn't need a magic wand. He didn't need, anything else to make the Force work. So it was cooler. It was it was different. It made the Force unique, but now they're just magic. It's just space magic. All right. It's not even like some cool, unique thing. It's just space magic now. And that's pretty lame in my opinion. But we move on from that scene with Green Lady and Jedi Master Squid Game, and we move into uncomfortable Jedi Knight scene where he's just like naked for some reason, like in the middle of this room. Like, everyone comes in and like they're talking about, health administration's, leaving, or like the ship crashing and all that stuff. And he says the line, I wrote it down, I should have brought her in myself. And it's like, dude, yeah, you should have, but the script's stupid, so you didn't. But also, like, he's standing there naked, steaming his robes. Like, it's a hallway, it's a room, it's not private. Like, they just walk in. Like, one of two things has to be true. Either this dude has to be like in a public area, just bare ass naked, or they have to be barging into a private quarters to tell him about this. And like, everyone's super uncomfortable about it, especially since the one Padawan chick is there. And I mean, I don't know how old she's supposed to be. It's hard to tell with alien races. The actor looks really young, but like, the Padawans in general tend to be younger. Like, let's just go out on a limb and assume that she's 18. This guy's a Jedi Knight, presumably has been for many years now. Dude's like in his mid-20s. Would you be super comfortable at 18 just walking in on a naked dude? I don't know. It seems like something weird to call out here. But like, in the very next scene, they reveal that like, oh, hey, it actually might be her twin sister. And it's like, wait, hold on. These Jedi, they can presumably like see into the future. They can see all this other stuff. And they couldn't detect that, she had a sister. No one knew this. And here's the other thing. My future sight tells me from watching the other 4 episodes that supposedly Health Administration and Captain Uncomfortable here they were like Padawans together. They grew up together or something, and they had at least a previous relationship, and it never came up that she had a twin. At least in this first episode. After that, it just becomes like a, oh well, I've always known, like you've always had this, but we'll get into motivations here in a minute. But yeah, like they just assumed it was her, couldn't force sense it, couldn't do anything, which I saw the defense for this. The defense for this is that, you know, in the prequel trilogy, they couldn't sense that a Sith Lord was literally like the Chancellor, the dude that they were talking to the most. And to that I say, yeah, it was dumb then and it's dumb now. But here's the thing. There was enough other stuff in the prequels that I could enjoy that I can't enjoy about this show, because the acting in the prequels isn't great, but at least I could enjoy like the spectacle of it. The nice fight scenes, an excellent choreography, the work that went into the effects was much better. Overall, there was just more to like about the prequels than this. And so I want to say it was dumb then and it's dumb now, but this is a special kind of stupid. So this episode ends with everyone kind of going in, with everyone being Squid Game, Uncomfortable, Horny Girl, and Health Administration all showing up on this planet, which there's no like environment. Again, this is like they're not paying attention to anything, because everything in the set says that this is like cold. Like there's supposed to be snow blowing in. They're like on top of a mountain or something, and everyone's standing there and no one acts like they're cold. No one acts like, oh, hey, I want to grab this jacket. Oh, hey, I should dress for warmer weather, or I should dress for like cold weather or whatever. But you know, is it just dandruff that's falling? Is it not snow? Like, is it special non-cold space snow? I demand an answer to this, because this is an oversight that just it staggers my belief that professional people looked at this and said, good enough, get it out. I have a specific note in here that the Jedi Master Uncomfortable or Jedi Knight Uncomfortable, I don't know which one you are and I'm not looking into it, but hey, idiot, that he like holds his lightsaber up and he's using it basically like a flashlight. Like he's just looking around the ship or whatever. And I just look at it like, hey dude, that's hot. That's dangerous. That's going to hurt you. But he does not react like it's hot or that could hurt him. It's just a big glow stick to him. And that's amazingly stupid. And I had to point that out. But anyway, the episode actually ends. They follow Health Administration out onto a cliff. And no one says, hey, idiot, that cliff is going to be dangerous. You're going to fall off of it and die. They instead start talking to her and she's like, oh, hey, I didn't actually kill Trinity. And then Squid Game looks at her and says, oh, I know. I get it. I'm with you here. And you know what? Credit where credit's due. That actually does serve a narrative purpose. It speaks to him as a Force user, you know, using the Force. And that's severely lacking in this show. So, yeah, we ended on a somewhat good note. I wouldn't call it a great note, but it was somewhat good, and that was all right. So those are all the notes I have on the first episode, and that's by far the one I have the most thoughts on, at the very least, because I wrote my notes down. I actually kind of flowed the episode. I've talked a little bit about the other episodes, and I'm going to get into all of those right now. So I'm going to try to condense 4 episodes essentially into one rant as quickly as I can get through it, at least like hitting the highlights here. The first and most obvious place to start with this side of my rant is going to be with episode 3, and episode 3 is in particularly horrible, partially because it has child actors, and as I've explained before, I hate children actors. But if you look past the child actors and look into everything this implies about, the show and the wider Star Wars universe, let me start off with what it implies about the show. It implies that within this show that, there was a group of witches that birthed occupational safety and health administration together in the same womb, which, that's fine, whatever. They're space witches within the confines of the show. This is fine. But it kind of doesn't mean anything yet, as far as we know. I mean, there's going to be 8 episodes. We know that there's 8 episodes. But as of episode 5, it does not matter that they were created by the Force. They aren't even thought of as particularly special. Like, no one said, hey, you guys are really powerful because you were created with the Force, which the witches call the thread, which I'm not going to get into that. I'm going to skip past that real quick. But no one has said that this makes them unique at all. They've only referenced at the very, tail end of the 5th episode that the witches existed. Everything else has been like, oh, well, these Jedi, or, oh, well, I have to do this. That's health safety saying that. But apparently they were conceived together by I'm sure they want us to see this as a coven of witches, but really it seems like a cult. This is Waco 2.0 in the Star Wars universe. They don't want to comply with the space cops that are the Jedi when they show up, and they toy with an idea here that's almost interesting. They get dangerously close to it. And that is that when the main witch lady says, oh, well, this is all about power and who gets to use it, that can be an interesting idea. Like, hey, what are the Jedi doing that, you're so opposed to? They're explaining to you that you can't do something and you want to do it. They are trying to tell you how to live your life and you don't like that. No, we're just going to skip past all of that because we got to do some song stuff. I'm positive if you've been on the internet, you've seen the power of one, power of two, power of many thing. I'm not going to even try to recreate that. I have too much shame for this. I can't imagine being an actor doing that embarrassing shit. I would just go home and drink. Not that I'm not going to do that, but I would be super duper drunk after that. I would have to be super drunk to do that, but I would be even more drunk afterwards because that's embarrassing. It's super dumb looking, super dumb sounding, and I pity the person that had to edit that scene. But anyway, this cult, it's not explicitly stated that they are lesbians, but I'm 100% certain that that's what they were going for, that they wanted to make, this giant group of space lesbians, and they all just have a big old orgy every other Thursday or, every second Tuesday of the month or whatever. But they did that, but then they also made them super villainous and shady. And I don't know that that was intentional. They probably are trying to play up this mystery. But after watching 5 episodes, they have gotten literally no other explanation other than they are a bunch of evil people doing evil shit. So as of right now, I'm declaring them the big bad of the series. The bad guys are all going to link back to this cult of witches that are doing terrible things to children. And the reason I specify that in particular is because when the Jedi come in and they're like, hey, we need to test your kids to see if they got the tism or whatever. They're like, no, we don't have kids. And that's some real David Koresh shit right there. Koresh was real big on not wanting to give up his quote unquote kids. And that's all I could really think about while I was watching that episode. And before I get off of episode 3, I do just want to address that I know that this show breaks lore over its knee like it's no big deal. Several times people have been complaining about that in episode 4 in particular, and yes, it does do that. It makes it makes a joke of the whole Star Wars canon, which is a real problem that you come up with whenever you're doing things as a prequel. And it's something else. I don't want to really get into it too much because it's not what I want to talk about. What I do want to talk about is in episode 4 and 5. The acting in particular gets horrific. Again, except for Jedi Master Squid Game. He is the shining beacon of hope for this series, honestly. Everyone else acts like they don't want to be there. They act like they don't care about this material, and they're not even trying, really. And he's the only one that is, he's definitely giving it his all. He can only do so much with the material that he's given. But he in particular, I believe him when he says stuff like a Jedi. I see him as a Jedi. I don't see, well, this isn't my joke, but the Sith Lord Mad Goose Wizard, that's an Ezra Miller joke, because everyone says that the Sith dude looks like Ezra Miller, and I've not been able to get that out of my head. Just that scene or that clip of Ezra Miller saying Mad Goose Wizard. I want him to pop off that stupid helmet, and the helmet is stupid, which in the first episode, I actually had it in my notes. I didn't say it when I was talking about episode 1, but in episode 1, I kind of praised the villain because I like the voice. The voice they do for him is actually really cool. And his silhouette looking thing, like his design as a character and his costume and all that clearly had a lot of thought put into it. But then when they reveal it in episode 4 and 5, the Smilo Ren thing they got going on is super dumb. I really hated that. It really ruined the whole design when they actually lit it. And maybe it's like a Batman thing, because if you've ever seen Batman in broad daylight, he looks stupid, but you see him at night and it looks awesome. It's cool, but you have to be really purposeful with your character design, how you're showing them, when you're showing them, how much of them you're showing, in order to pull off a character design like that. But yeah, that guy actually, he does a fairly decent job. The Mad Goose Wizard guy, he does an all right job as, the Sith, but he's just in a better show with better direction, he would be great. But he's just okay, and really, he's not doing a better job than Squid Game is. And they're really playing the adverb game here. They're saying, oh, well, this, that. They're not telling us anything about the story yet, because they're trying to drag this out to 8 episodes. It kind of seems like they were trying to do like maybe a 3-episode series or 4-episode series, but they got told by Disney, it's like, no, you gotta drag this out to 8. And that's when they decided, oh no, and they started just doing stuff like the prison ship that is completely unnecessary, but it added like 20 minutes of runtime, or however long that lasted. It felt like 20 minutes. It felt like 20 years, actually. But it's all right. I feel like I've said everything I need to say about most of this. If this video gets a good response, I will do another one. I can break down each episode more thoroughly. I just kind of gave you an overview. I didn't really even talk about episode 2 because nothing happens in it. But I'm also trying to do a different setup, a different kind of feel for this video. This is much longer than any other video I've done. So if you liked it, let me know by leaving a like and subscribe if you want more content like this. I want to thank everyone for joining me today while I talk about the Acolyte, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.